could have our meeting start. There is a sheet on the open meetings back on the wall, and also there's a defibrillator also back on the wall. If we could pledge allegiance. One nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, Chris Rogers is not here today, so unfortunately for all of you, you have to put up with me and assist me. We'll get started here with the Board of Equalization. So the first item is the Board of Equalization. We have roll call.
There we go. All right.
And I mentioned that.
Commissioner Borgeson? Here. Commissioner Boyle? Here. Commissioner Kavanaugh? Here. Commissioner Duda? Here. Commissioner Kraft? Here. Mr. Chair?
Here.
And like you said, Commissioner Rogers is absent.
Commissioner Boyle was already helping me on the open meetings, but I'd already covered that, luckily. Anyway, approval of the minutes of the Board of Equalization, July 2nd. Call for a meeting Tuesday, July 30th, as a date of hearing on certified assessment corrections reflecting additions of omitted properties on the tax rolls or increased value on property. And if we could, we have a motion by Mark Kraft, seconded by Commissioner Boyle, to approve A and B. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Boyle's vote will not appear due to technical difficulties, but he does vote yes, as do the rest of the, well, excuse me, Commissioner Duda. There we go. Motion passes 6-0.
Thank you. Citizen comments concerning anything to do with the Board of Equalization at this time? If any citizen would like to comment? If not, we'll go on to resolutions D. And you have a long list of those. Are there any comments or questions on those by any of the commissioners?
Motion to approve. Second.
D, okay.
Are you doing D and E, Commissioner Boyle?
Yes. And I will second that.
Motion's made by Commissioner Boyle, seconded by Commissioner Kraft to approve D and E.
I'm sorry, I have a question.
Okay. Commissioner Kavanaugh, go ahead.
Okay, the topic on mine says Board of Equalization D as in dog and E. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Then I have a couple of informational questions on those. If Mr. Goodwillie maybe could share his knowledge with us, that'd be great. Sure. Does that work?
Eads office. What can I do for you today?
Less to be determined. So under these resolutions, we'll take them in order. D, there's a whole series of properties here, and I looked through them, and there appear to be a couple of different categories, but the predominant one seems to be parcel formally exempt.
Sure.
Okay. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but that would indicate that maybe parcel had fallen under a tax exempt category, it was owned by a...
Could have been governmentally owned, could have been permissively exempt, meaning owned by a church, school, what have you. And if that property transfers or changes use, then it is subject to coming on back on the tax rolls. And if one of those events occurs prior to levy date in October, then they can be put on the tax rolls for the current tax year. So I think most of them, and I'm not gonna stand here and pretend that I'm intimately familiar with them all, but I suspect if you look through the backup, what you'll find is a real estate transfer statement in which some non-exempt private entity is the purchaser, and so now it's no longer qualifying as being owned by an exempt entity, and it'll come back on the tax rolls. The other big category throughout these resolutions are mobile homes, which are a complete nightmare because they are defined as real property, but you collect the taxes on them like personal, and so it tends to follow the individual around. And so if somebody no longer owns the mobile home, we shouldn't be chasing them for tax dollars for a property they no longer own. And what ends up happening also with mobile homes in general is the paperwork for transfers on those don't tend to be as, what word do I want, diligent, I guess, as if you sell, bricks and sticks. And so as a consequence, they're always, we always have information coming in on mobile homes about so-and-so actually sold it 2 years ago, or so-and-so bought it actually last year. So those are the two big categories, I think, going from exempt to non-exempt and then mobile homes.
And Mr. Goodwillie, you correct me, but to further answer the question as you did so finely, we had that property about a year or so ago that came up before the board on 24th and Cummings, which would be the northwest corner. And CHI had that medical facility.
Sure.
And it went back on the tax rolls because it was purchased by a private entity.
Right.
And they were leasing it back, and therefore it lost its tax exemption, Commissioner Kavanaugh. So that would be an example of a property that sold for about $33 million, as I recall.
I don't
And
recall the purchase price, but that's pretty typical. The exempt entity sells it, and it comes back on the tax roll.
that's it. Any further questions, Commissioner Kavanaugh?
Yes, just a couple. So those are the two main categories, as you indicated, and then, there's some lease square footage change, which I presume would be kind of the same. It's gone from a tax exempt square footage to a non-tax exempt square footage.
Yeah, in that scenario, that property had a partial exemption, and when properties are partially exempt and partially taxable, we tax the square footage that is being.
Gotcha. So the only other two, and I think these are kind of outliers, one is a court operator's list was incorrect, not owner. Is that just a clerical error?
I suppose what ends up, we are supposed to get from everybody that operates a mobile home court listing of the tenants, basically. Often those contain errors.
Okay. And then there was one that says taxes were accelerated and paid.
If a mobile home is going to move, just like personal property that might be moved out of the jurisdiction, you accelerate the taxes, which is basically, you take the current year's value times the previous tax rate and collect them before they completely beat feet and you don't collect any taxes at all. And so what ended up happening here is I think we had a mobile home that was going to move, we accelerated the taxes and and collected them, and now there's a clerical adjustment we have to make in the account.
Gotcha. And just real quick, the last one, value removed in realware but did not roll over to IMS.
We have our computer assisted mass appraisal system that we use in-house is RealWare, and the system the county uses for billing is a fairly elderly mainframe system called IMS that we keep together, that .com keeps together with chewing gum and baling wire. And the two systems have to talk to each other for tax billing to work properly. And every once in a while, they don't.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Sure.
Commissioner Boyle?
Mr. Goodwillie, first, I want to thank you for the, obviously, the great deal of attention that your office and Ms. Badiato are paying to. This is really impressive to have this kind of detail. You're really tracking people well.
Well, thank you, Commissioner, and here's a little inside baseball. We try and get a lot of this stuff done at this time of year simply because come middle of August, we have to certify the values to the political subdivisions
Right.
for budget and levy setting. And so this is a longer list of things that we usually have, but we're trying to clean up these previously exempts and everything else to get things ready to certify.
Well, it's really, I'm very impressed with it. When I first read it, I thought, wow, I mean, I like it, it's really helpful. And one other thing I'd like to ask you to do, but I don't want you to do it now, is I've got questions about, when I look at these, I've got questions about medical facilities that are being operated by individuals who are making a living, doctors or x-ray companies or whatever, but they're in buildings that are owned by hospitals or nonprofits. Can you tell us what we can do about that, but not now? I don't know if there's anything we can do.
Well, what we're currently doing is for those nonprofit hospitals that are leasing space to privately owned clinics,
Right.
the square footage in those clinics is taxable. We treat those properties as if they're partially exempt. And so most of the hospitals in town do have some taxable component. I mean, the vast majority of the space is used by the hospital, and that's a whole different issue about the taxability of hospitals. But at least with respect to those private clinics where the space is leased, we tax those.
Okay, good.
Because the third part of the test for permissive property tax exemption in Nebraska is the property cannot be used for gain or
Right.
profit to the owner or the user.
Okay.
And so even though they're using the space for a medical facility where you could, I suppose, argue that it meets the definition of charitable, which is, for our purposes, providing for the mental, social, or physical benefit of the public or an indefinite number of persons, they fail that third gain or profit test. And so therefore, that space, that's why every year with hospitals, we always follow up with them about, okay, how much space are you leasing versus how much space are you using? Because almost inevitably it changes a little bit from year to year.
Do you have any records like that we could look at that would be like this, or is that pretty extensive?
Oh, I'm not quite sure what you mean. I mean,
Okay. Well, I'll tell you what I'll do. It's kind of involved, and I appreciate you get into great detail, which is really great. Why don't I give you a call and I'll visit with you? I know you're very busy, though. but-
well, why don't you reach out to Diane? And
Oh,
then-
okay, good.
Then she
I
can
will.
stick me on the project if she so
I'll
desires.
do that. Thanks, Diane. Thank you very much.
Commissioner Boyle, many doctors' practices have been purchased by the hospital now, so they own them and then put them in those buildings. But your questions are very good and timely. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
And thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Diane.
Okay, the next item would be FG. Oh, I'm sorry. If we could vote on D and E, please, this time.
Motion passes 6-0.
Item F is approving government-owned properties. You see the list there before you?
I would move approval of items F through J and adjournment. Second.
Any questions? If not, we have a motion by Commissioner Duda, seconded by Commissioner Boyle. If not, please vote.
Motion passes 6-0.
Also, we reserve the right for an executive session, but I don't think there's any need unless Teresa advises me of such, or Commissioner. At this time, I would like to go through the agenda for the Douglas County Board of Corrections. So first item would be the approval of the minutes of the last one held on June 11th. Oh, the roll call. Go ahead for the board again.
Commissioner Borgeson? Commissioner Boyle? Commissioner Kavanaugh? Commissioner Duda? Commissioner Kraft? Commissioner Rogers is absent. Mr. Chair?
Yes, here. Okay. So, rude. Okay. Approval of the minutes. From June 11th. Okay. And, all right. Roll call, please. take the vote and then, all right. Or,
Motion passes 6-0.
May I interject something? Mike just says that because just like, you beat a child because you love them.
got it. But Mike won't be asking any more questions because I won't call on him anymore today, so
I don't love you anymore.
he could. Are there any citizen comments concerning the Douglas County Board of Corrections by anyone? If not, we'll have the report from our director's out of town, but Amber will be making that report today. And thank you, Adam,
Good morning, Commissioners.
for being here.
No problem. Amber Redmond, Deputy Director. I am stepping in for Director Myers, who had a prior engagement that he couldn't reschedule. So I'm here to deliver our final Board of Corrections report for the 2019 fiscal year. There is an error that I need to point out right away on his summary there on page 1, enclosure number 1. That first bullet point didn't get updated from last month's report. We actually finished the fiscal year under budget. We were $56,583 under budget. When we received our supplement from you guys back in, I think, February, to adjust for the back pay and the additional pay scale amounts that we needed to do with the FOP contract, we actually anticipated having to come in front of you again for an additional supplement before the end of the budget year, and that turned out not necessary. So we're happy to report that we came in under budget.
One question, I think it showed 31,000, but the correct amount's 56,000.
Correct.
Very good.
56,583, yep. Okay, moving on to enclosure number 2, community corrections and in-house programs. Both of the numbers listed there in the first 2 bullet points. We had 22 individuals serving 133 days in the Sanction Center and 29 individuals serving a combined total of 172 days in the Transitional Discharge Center. Both of those numbers, both the number of individuals and the number of days, are an all-time high for us. That really saves the equivalent of about 10 beds a day in the main facility, so that's working out really well for us. The position formerly known as the Reentry Programs Administrator, that's actually Justine Wall's former position. So when Mike Myers promoted, Justine Wall promoted into Mike Myers' former position. This is her former job title prior to her promotion, Reentry Programs Administrator. We're doing some restructuring at that level. We've renamed the position the Community Reentry Services Manager. We just finalized that job description with HR just last week, so that if it's not yet posted, it will be posted this month. Mike mentions that the revision of the job description is designed to increase the resources available to the development and implementation of community-based support and supervision programs intended to reduce the pretrial detention numbers. So we're really excited about getting this posted and filled and trying to restructure that position accordingly. Before I move on from this section regarding the Transitional Discharge Center, we have had some success with that program. So just this last couple of weeks, we recently took steps to expand our screening process. Historically, we looked at people finishing the last 7 days of their sentence, and we're now screening individuals that are serving the last 10 days of their sentence, trying to find out if we can move some more individuals out of the main facility and into that discharge center. We continue to bring in record numbers for the 24/7 sobriety program. You can see there that 24/7 sobriety program had 73 admissions in June, equaling another all-time high record. We've never had over 4,000 breath tests administered in a month, so that's another all-time high. 39 individuals were monitored on Scram. 590 saliva drug tests were administered, and 20 drug test patches were submitted for testing. Moving on into work release, house arrest, reentry assistance program, community programs, nothing too significant to report in those remaining criminal justice programs. Moving on to enclosure number 3, we will have some visitors starting tomorrow. We'll be visited for a routine audit by Immigration and Customs Enforcement. They'll be here tomorrow through Friday. And we continue to follow up with our most recent PREA audit. We do owe them a couple of follow-up items since their visit to our facility, and so we're still working on that. Looking at enclosure number 4, personnel. We did start a class of 20 new officers in early July. The hiring committee is also continuing to meet and working to set our next class that will start in early September. The class of that size is yet unknown. We are still aiming for another large class. 13 new correctional officers completed their field training in the first week of June, so that was the last new hire class. They're now graduated and on their own, not needing any further assistance from the training staff. Unfortunately, at various ranks and for a variety of reasons, we did lose 11 officers during the month of June. So it took a hard hit. I have to give credit to a lieutenant. Just the other day, we were having a meeting regarding staffing and the inmate population, and he kind of reminded us that it's not unusual for us to see a spike in our attrition during these months of June and July. We experienced the same thing during December and January as we kind of go through those shift change processes. And as much as we warn people that based on seniority you can be moved to an alternative shift, some are not quite prepared to make that transition in their lives. So we do see an increase in our attrition around these months. Our efforts for prioritizing staff wellness and retention are ongoing. We have taken steps to establish a wellness committee, which will organize a variety of activities intended to improve staff mental health, physical well-being, job satisfaction, and retention. Since this report was compiled, the Wellness Committee has met one time so far. We're working on some of our very beginning initiatives with that new committee. During the month of June, Hannah Sullivan was promoted to the rank of lieutenant, and although not bullet pointed there, Candace Gaines was also promoted to records and accounting manager. That's kind of filling that chain of command that I promoted from as well. So we're starting to fill out the rest of our management staff in that regard as well. Enclosure number 5, dealing with the inmate population. We continue to be challenged by a high inmate population. Although we did experience a low count during the month of June of 1,246, you can see it spiked again before the end of the month with a high count of 1,344. Our average daily population came in at 1,277 for the month of June. In regards to enclosure number 6 for medical, probably the most significant item to report there is that WellPath promoted Jeff Taplett to Health Services Administrator and hired Stephen Rochelle as the Director of Nursing, so that's WellPath taking their initiative to fill out the rest of their leadership team as well. Other noteworthy items. The captain's position was also revised and will be posted this month. The additional captain position will allow for increased specialization to address critical needs at DCDC, including staff development and retention and oversight of the medical contract. That's that third captain's position that Mike advocated for prior to the end of the fiscal year. That will also be posted this month. DCDC would like to recognize Officer Ashley Hamilton, who, despite being inflicted with an injury and pain during an inmate assault, maintained her composure and professionalism to protect the well-being of a pregnant female inmate. Mike will try and make arrangements to bring her in front of the county board at next month's meeting so you guys can have a chance to talk with her. And trying to end on a good note, despite the losses of staff which occurred during June, there is reason for optimism. 22 candidates for sergeant were interviewed by myself, the director, and Captain West. And the results were inspiring and encouraging. Doing promotional interviews has really turned out to be one of my favorite activities. It's very time consuming and there is a lot of candidates to interview, but it always turns out to be one of the most rewarding things that we go through. The candidates understand the need for a culture change at DCDC with the concept of servant leadership. This is a concept that Mike really hit home with all of the candidates that we interviewed, and everybody is on board with that idea. Several of the candidates will be promoted during the upcoming year and will have an opportunity to make a profound impact for many years to come. This is really a popular talking point down at the jail right now. We are promoting a lot of sergeants this month, and many are saying that hasn't been done since probably 2004 when we did our last major construction project. With that said, what questions do you guys have?
All right, questions, and Amber, thank you so much, you and Mike and the team you have down there and doing and meeting the challenges and showing the great respect for those that we have to have confined there.
I have one.
Commissioner Kraft?
Amber, what is an ICE integration and custom enforcement audit? What does that entail?
We have a federal contract with immigration, and we house immigration inmates. We're routinely audited by that team of folks there, and so they'll be at our office starting tomorrow.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Commissioner Kavanaugh?
Thank you. If I understand this correctly, our current census population is 1,277, is that correct?
No, I looked at
That
it
was
this,
the average.
yeah, that's
Okay.
the average daily
What's the
population.
census population?
I looked at it this morning and it said 1356, I believe, 1356.
Okay. And what's the record high population?
I think we experienced that just yesterday. We had a meeting to discuss that very topic, and we were at 1385, I believe.
So we hit the record yesterday?
I believe so. We didn't go back and historically check to see when the last time was that our count was that high, but that is very high for us. I think you often refer or hear us say that our capacity is rated at 1449. So for us to be at 1385, and knowing that we're down 2 housing units because of our current renovation project, we're very full. We're beyond full.
Gotcha. And as to staffing, if I understand this correctly, we added 13 new correction officers and 11 people left our staff. Is that right? Over the same period?
That sounds about right for the month of June.
Okay, so we were understaffed going into this thing, have been chronically understaffed for as long as I can recall.
Yes, we continue to try and play catch-up.
Okay. And so we really are not making a lot of headway there relative to
We're making
this month anyhow.
slow progress.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Duda?
Thank you, and thanks for the good report, Amber. Just a quick question, kind of related on capacity. When we talk about our 24/7 and a number of these things being at all-time highs, are there any capacity issues there? Are we able to meet the demand for all of these tests and everything that we want to be administering?
Yes, those are all programs dealt with outside of the main facility, so we are able to handle people in
So
that
no,
capacity.
no problem there.
Correct.
I mean, how great that is that these are at an all-time high as well to be helping with the
Yeah,
jail.
it's pretty indicative of the high count that we're experiencing. You know, the more people that we're admitting into the facility, ideally, the more number of individuals that will get out onto alternative programs to try and ease the stress of the inmate population in the main facility.
Very good, thank you.
Yeah.
Commissioner Boyle?
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you,
A
Commissioner
little
Moore.
painful.
Amber, I wanted to ask you about, I know that you've really been aggressive in hiring, but it's one of those jobs that is very challenging, and so people get in there and they decide that this isn't for them. And I know you've had several classes in the last 12 months. How many have you had, and how many people have you hired? Do you remember? Can you shoot that figure?
I can follow up with you on those numbers.
Okay, that's great. Well, I know it's been a lot, because I know
Yeah.
that you're doing classes while you're starting a class while you've still got one going, and it's kind of hard to keep up.
That is correct.
I wanted to ask you about on page 3, the mental health statistics. Is this is pretty normal, the numbers and so forth, and we have such a high population with some degree of mental illness, and I was just reading an article about brain injuries causing so many problems here. And I know you're doing some work on that too. You're asking about brain injuries when people come in, and it's pretty revealing, I believe. But is this pretty normal for the mental health on page 3? Are those numbers pretty much?
Yeah, there wasn't a huge change or fluctuation in those numbers.
Okay. All right. Well, I really appreciate this report is always so clear and inclusive, and I really appreciate it very much. So, and thank you. You're doing a fine job.
Thank you.
We appreciate your work very much. I do. Thank you. We need to come down. We need to have a little visit down there one of these days.
Always welcome.
Pretty soon, too. We won't do it today, we have a meeting right after this occurs, so,
Okay.
but we will schedule it when it works.
Just let us know.
And one last thing I'd like to ask you, is there something that the board can do to help you with morale and let people know that we care about them down there? Is there, you know, something we could do to recognize and?
You know, we'll certainly keep you updated and involved in our wellness initiatives as we
Okay.
start to get that committee
Good.
off the ground. We're starting to talk to employees and really create a vision for what that looks like.
Okay.
So as we start to identify those additional parts, we'll certainly let you know.
And I think there's also a component in the health insurance that if you do certain things, they'll reduce the premium too, so.
Correct.
That's something that is always good to know too.
Yes.
Amber, thanks again.
No
Nice
problem.
job.
Any other questions?
I'd like to make
Am-
a comment.
Oh, go ahead.
I would like to apologize for that ill-apprised comment I made about Mike and his comment to PJ. And that was a phrase I heard when I was a teenager, and one of my neighbors came and hid at our house, all bruised. And when my mother was quizzing him what happened, he said, my mother beats me. She says it's because she loves me. And that has burned itself into my mind. It's not something I would encourage, and I don't know why I blurted it out. But he only insults you because he loves you.
Amber, I want to thank you. I believe the class started July 8th,
It did. Our
so
last new hire
we have a
class.
class going on right now.
Yes.
Again, we want to be as supportive as we can be, so let Mike and others know that constructive criticism to us, or meeting with us, or coming there to visit, whatever we can do, as Mike said, about letting the people there know how much they're appreciated, the team. We're glad to do that.
Thank you for that reminder. I will get you a graduation invitation
Okay,
for that new hire class.
what's the date do you think that might be
They're on
roughly?
week 3, so they have another 5 to go. They should be
September.
graduating in another 3 weeks, yeah. Yeah, they'll
August.
graduate before they move into their FTO program. I'll
Great.
send an invite out to you guys.
Okay,
Thanks.
thank you.
Mhm.
With that said, I don't think we need any vote. We've accepted that. I think we adjourn the Board of Corrections at this time, and please vote.
Motion passes 6-0.
County Board of to order and ask for roll call.
Commissioner Borgeson? Commissioner Boyle? Commissioner Kavanaugh? Commissioner Duda? Commissioner Kraft?
Here.
Commissioner Rogers is absent. Mr. Chair.
Here. With that said, we'll have approval of the minutes of the Board of Commissioners meeting held July 2nd, and also we could combine it with B, approval of claims submitted for payment passed through Tuesday, July 23rd, and there's a complete listing on file in the county clerk's office. So,
Second.
okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Duda, seconded by Commissioner Kraft to approve A and B. Any questions? If not, please vote.
Motion passes 6-0.
Okay, we have the consent agenda, and there may be some that would like to remove a certain item or get those all approved at that time. Commissioner Boyle?
I just have a comment on the, on item A. There's a tort claim, and it doesn't, I like it to have, mention what department was involved, so can someone communicate that to, Patrick, would you ask the, Daryl to do that? Oh. I don't need to know it right now, but if you know it, that's fine.
Darrell Neely, Douglas County. That's the Sheriff's Department.
Okay, if you put that in there, I'd appreciate it. There's one that you did later that does mention it. I'd just like to see what's going on.
Yeah, that's the normal format, so
Okay.
just something omitted.
Okay, no problem. Thanks a lot, Darrell, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Do we have, oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner Kavanaugh.
I just have a couple of informational questions on H and I. These are grants, and I don't know if Carrie Davis is here, but
Good morning, Commissioners. Carrie Davis, Douglas County Grant Coordinator.
hi. So these two grants deal with community-based juvenile services aid grant and community-based juvenile service enhancement program grants. Let me take these in order. The first one, the Douglas County Community-Based Juvenile Services Grant, is for, it looks like a total of $1.8 million, including the match.
Correct.
Okay. So what part of that is coming out of Douglas County funds?
The match comes from the youth center. We match with part of, I believe, a supervisor's salary and some of the food contract. And I believe there's another contract that we match with. But it's all, I believe it's all from Douglas County Youth Center.
Okay. I guess my question is, the state seems to be providing $1.6 million.
Correct.
And the match is $184,000 and
Correct.
change. Is that the portion that Douglas County puts forth?
Yes, the match is, yes.
Okay. And then the overall $1.8 million of the grant and the match is used for what purposes?
The majority of it gets subgranted out to agencies within the community who are serving juveniles within the county. A small portion of it does go to a few Douglas County departments who serve juveniles, but the majority of it gets granted out into the community.
Okay. And those awards are made how?
We go through a grant process in which the state tells us we get an allocation based on our juvenile population. So we know ahead of time how much Douglas County is going to get. So then we have an application that we send out into the community for juvenile services agencies to apply for funding out of this pot of money. They fill out a grant application just like we would, and then they submit it to us. It goes before an advisory, it goes before staff review first to check for clerical errors and allowability and allocability. And then it goes to an advisory committee that includes representatives that you all chose to vet these applications. So they go through and decide which ones they would like to fund, and then they make their recommendations to the steering committee, the Operation Youth Success Steering Committee. And then the steering committee votes on the final award, who's going to get which grants, and then we let the award recipients know. And then it's done as a reimbursement basis. The money comes to us, and then we reimburse those awarded their sub-grants.
Does this involve you on the grant award process specifically?
I'm part of the staff review, so I'm one of the first people that looks at the applications, and then it goes to other folks.
Right, so you don't do the actual distribution of the grants, you're basically reviewing the applications to make
Correct.
sure that they're correctly submitted.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And then the ultimate grant award entity, this steering committee, what's the name of that?
That's the Operation Youth Success Steering Committee, and that's something that the crime, actually, that's a statute that says we have to have this money go through a community committee that approves those subawards.
Okay. You don't have any involvement with that portion of this process?
I go to the meeting, and I'm just there for support if folks have questions about any part of the process or any of the grants that I might have knowledge of, then I'm able to interject
Okay.
at those times, but that's the extent of my involvement at that point.
Okay. So the second one, which is a much smaller grant,
Yes,
the Douglas County Community-Based Juvenile Service Enhancement Grant,
correct.
what's briefly the purpose of that grant?
That one is every county in the state is given an allocation based on their juvenile population for the community-based aid dollars. Some jurisdictions don't use all of their money, and so the Crime Commission retains that amount, and then the next year, they use it to run this grant program with those funds. But this grant program, the enhancement program, is competitive in nature. Excuse me, I lost the word. Whereas the community-based aid is an allocation, the enhancement grant is actually a competitive application process, but it's made up of funds that weren't used from the previous year's community-based aid grant.
And this is a total of 21,000 with the state and local grant, so it's much smaller than the other one
Correct.
we're talking about. But is it distributed through this same process that you described on the previous grant?
Yes, it
And
is, yes.
it is, and so ultimately it would be awarded by the OYS.
Steering committee, yes.
Okay? Thanks very much.
Sure, no problem. Any other questions?
Other questions? Thank you
Sure, no
very
problem.
much.
Sure.
If I could get a motion, if there aren't any further questions, to pull out probably B because of Commissioner Duda.
I would be requesting that, yes.
And if you want to make a motion to approve A through N excluding B.
I will move for the approval of the consent agenda less item B, which pertains to the Foxville Fire Department, which I'm an active member of, so I will be abstaining on item 7.
Okay, so we have a motion by Commissioner Duda, A through N excluding item B, and a second by Commissioner Boyle. Please vote. And now if we could have a motion.
Motion passes 6-0.
For
Move that
B.
we pass item B in spite of the fact that Claire Duda is on that board.
I'll second it.
I knew there'd be a prize.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Kraft, seconded by Commissioner Boyle. And if we could vote at this time. It's nice that we can always count on
Motion
Commissioner.
passes. Commissioner Duda abstains. Other commissioners present voting yes.
Commissioner Boyle whenever there's something for Commissioner Duda. All right. Moving on. We have some recognition proclamations. And I'm not sure if any of the employees are here for this one. One is from the Douglas County Health Center after 23 years of service, retiring, and that's Renee Engart. I'm not sure that if she's here or someone's here from the HR department. Also, we have another one from the Sheriff's Office, 27 years of service, Joseph Manelli, and he's not here either. And also, we have recognition of another retirement of 21 years of service, Donna McCain, and I don't think she's here either. S-
Approval of items A through Z.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second by Commissioner Kraft, or Duda, and then Commissioner Boyle seconding that motion. Please vote. And now we have something, I think this
Motion
person,
passes 6-0.
this person's here, I believe. It's a resolution congratulating our own Marianne Borgeson on her election as president of the National Association of County Officials. And really great work by you over many years and the recognition of your leadership in this election. And I personally congratulate you. And I think it's great to have you as the head of this, and will provide much information to all of us in this year of your busy activities. Yes.
I do
asked that this be put on. I didn't intend it, that it come from me only. I made the mistake. I should have said it comes from all of us, because we all feel this way. So resolved, whereas on July 15, 2019, Commissioner Mary Ann Borgeson was sworn in as the National Association of County Officials, NACO, president while in Clark County, Nevada during NACO's 84th Annual Conference and Exhibition. And whereas she is the first woman from Nebraska to be elected to this national position. And whereas each president of NACO serves a one-year term and focuses on a specific initiative important to him or her during that year of service. And whereas Commissioner Borgeson's initiative will explore how counties can best assist the nation's aging population. And whereas during her term as NACO president, Commissioner Borgeson will serve with NACO's other executive board members, including First Vice President Gary Moore of Boone County, Kentucky, Second Vice President Larry Johnson of DeKalb County, Georgia, and immediate past President Greg Cox of San Diego County, California. And whereas Commissioner Borgeson was first elected to the Douglas County Board of Commissioners in 1994 and was reelected to her 6th term in 2014. And whereas in 1997, Commissioner Borgeson was the first woman elected to serve as chair of the Douglas County Board and has served in that capacity numerous times throughout her years in office. She has also served on the board of directors of the Nebraska Association of County Officials. And whereas before being elected to NACO president, Commissioner Borgeson served as chair of the NACO Health Services and Cybersecurity Committees, vice chair of the large Urban County Caucus LUCC, Healthy Counties, and Health Services Committees, and has been a member of the International Economic Development, Arts and Culture and Membership Programs and Services Committees. In addition, Commissioner Borgeson is a past president of the Women of NACO. Now therefore, be it resolved by this Board of County Commissioners, Douglas County, Nebraska, that this board does hereby recognize the outstanding achievement of Commissioner Mary Ann Borgeson on her exceptional public service accomplishments and further expresses the board's best wishes during her term as president of the National Association of Counties, dated this 23rd day of July, 2019. And you make the motion, Claire.
I would be honored to move the approval.
Someone else?
Second.
There we go.
So we have a motion by Commissioner Duda, seconded by Commissioner Kraft, and Commissioner Boyle, we appreciate you reading that. However,
Yeah.
as we like to do to each other, correct? Each other.
Yes.
You mentioned she was elected in 2014.
Oh, did I say that?
I think
That was
she'd be the only commissioner with an 8-year term. She was reelected in 2019. Am I correct,
Oh.
Mary Ann?
18 for her 7th term.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
Sworn in
Okay, well, who
19.
put this together anyway? No, okay.
So we have the motion and a second.
Yeah.
At this time, call on the vote.
I vote yes.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Before you do, if I may.
Yes.
I thank you for putting this on and recognizing Commissioner Borgeson, but I just want to say, even though I personally have never been very involved in NACO at the national level, I have seen the benefits of first Commissioner Rogers when he served as president, and I'm sure we'll see similar with Commissioner Borgeson. We're lucky to have this kind of leadership and representation from within our midst, and I think Douglas County is the beneficiary of this because of the networking. You know how everybody's doing everything, and that is so invaluable to us to benefit from that. This is the third president, actually, from Douglas County, because Dan Lynch did serve quite some time back, and I think you'd be hard pressed to find another county that has had 3 different presidents of NACO. But I just want to add my personal thanks to Commissioner Borgeson for her involvement, and I believe that the county is the recipient of this. So I thank you for what you're doing and congratulate you. But you're still a rookie even at 7 terms.
And we wish you the very best. Mary Ann, would you like to say something?
I would, if I can. I want to thank everybody for this. And Mike, thanks for being there. We had a good contingency from Nebraska, and Karen and Leah and Marcos came as well from staff, and Joe came, and Chris and Mike, and it was just really cool to have everybody there, and for you to fly in that day to be there was special.
Well, we're very proud of you, Mary Ann.
Thank you.
You conduct yourself so well and you were received so well. I had several people say to me, it's really remarkable to have this sort of thing happen to a state where we have almost a succession of.
Yeah.
And every one of those people, though, made a remark about you, how you've been involved and what you've done. So they were not surprised. It was not some kind of an automatic thing. So you worked your way up and you worked hard to get there, and you're a wonderful representation of county officials and really spectacular representative of Nebraska. So I was really glad to be there. It was fun. I didn't lose any money in the casino because I didn't bet.
Well, and the interesting thing of being the first woman from Nebraska, but I'm the 13th woman in all of the counties that has served as NACO president, and we made a kind of a joke about it, that lucky 13 while you're in Clark County, so don't know who made out on that one, but anyway, I thank you, and I'll definitely continue to work very hard for all of you, all of Nebraska, and all of
Great.
our 3,069 counties.
Thanks,
So thank
Mary
you.
Ann. Good luck.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
congratulations.
Thank you.
Is anyone else wanting to make a comment? I'll make just a couple. One is, I appreciate greatly your compassion and your sensitivity on this board on the matters that involve people so, well done. And I was not there, and I sent you a text about Annie's mother, my wife's mother, unexpectedly passing that weekend, Jean Foley. So I'm sorry I couldn't be there, but we appreciate your service a lot, and this year will be one where we'll cover for you here when you are gone. With that, please vote.
This morning. That you said.
Is it passed 4-3?
No.
No.
Motion passes. Commissioner Morgan instead of abstaining, all other commissioners present voting yes.
Okay, at this pass,
All right. The record will reflect Commissioner Morgan.
at this time,
Yes.
we'll have citizen comments. This is an opportunity for any member of the audience to be heard for a maximum time of 5 minutes on any topic not on the agenda as it relates to the governance of Douglas County. And under the Open Meetings Act, we've given reasonable notice for this, and also, as a result, the commissioners have been asked not to engage in discussion, conversation, debate on the item of the citizens' comments. So with that, go ahead, Larry.
I didn't want to get crushed in the stampede, you know.
That was courteous.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm going to try a little tongue-in-cheek this morning, but also with some seriousness to it. Some suggestions to maybe get a little more participation by people of the city, citizens. I'm sorry? Larry Store, 5015 Lafayette Avenue, Omaha, Nebraska, 68132. I'd like to see the county, and the city for that matter, prepare the agendas and the notices in more everyday language. I know we can all subscribe to the Daily Record or run downtown to get a copy, but we're not all lawyers. We don't understand a lot of the language in that. You have to be a lawyer to really read it. The Open Meetings Act, I'd like to suggest some handouts so that people don't, or if they're interested, don't have to get up and walk over there and open that book during the meeting. Just a brief summary of who that Open Meetings Act is for. Laws are basically passed for the citizens. And it opens up saying that law is basically for the citizen. Yeah, it does say that you can make some rules, but it does say reasonable. We'd like to know what you consider to be reasonable rules. So maybe a one-page handout explaining all that, and with the flow chart that says, right in bold language, that if you're here today, please remember you cannot comment. Parentheses, we will not let you comment on items that are not on the agenda. So we're sorry for the inconvenience that you came down and didn't understand that. But also that we will not banter back and forth or discuss with you. So that they don't have to sit here all day, maybe. They understand that, oh, I made a mistake, I came down thinking I could talk on whatever the topic was today. Sorry, folks, that's not the case. So let's provide a little more of that transparency that everybody likes to quote and put it in everyday language, a flow chart that immigrants maybe can understand. People that aren't familiar with our language, people that aren't familiar with legalese. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. And Dan, any thoughts you might have on anything we can do? I think, on our agenda, we want to make sure everyone knows that whatever item is on this agenda, we can respond to and have exchanges with citizens, and we'll just keep working at trying to make sure that's clear, which I think we've done a pretty good job, and Chris has worked hard on that. So if there's anything you have as ideas in the future, you be sure to let us know to help with that, just as a sideline to our agenda. I don't think we have any other presentations, so we'll go through the committee discussion. The Finance, Commissioner Boyle?
I think we're heading in the right direction, Joe's, there's still some money in the bank, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's nice.
Well, that's kind of important.
And next week, we're gonna do the budget presentation.
Pardon me?
Next Tuesday, we'll do the budget presentation.
Right.
So what Joe said is next week we'll be voting on the budget July 30th.
Right.
So anything else?
No, I think that's, I think we're ready to roll.
All right. I'm not sure if there's any other, we have a Health and Human Services meeting. Patrick, is there anything you have to report to us today on concerning any item?
Skipped over a couple of things. Administrative services, child.
No, I'm going to get to that one. I was saving that for last.
Okay, no, I have nothing.
Okay. And then item C, the Child and Youth Services, Teresa's requested that we lay this over at this time, and I'll follow her instructions so we could get a motion to lay it over for, I think she prefers that it be laid over for 2 weeks. Am I correct, Teresa? Or 1 week?
Teresa, York County Attorney's Office. I don't have a specific time frame at this time, and so we'll just bring it back before this board when it's ready to do so. If I could just get a motion to lay it over, that would be great.
You may. And we have a second, Commissioner Boyle. We have a motion by Commissioner Duda, seconded by Commissioner Boyle. This time, if we could vote concerning laying this matter over, the resolution of approving the sale and all terms and conditions of the Public Building Commission bonds. Okay, Commissioner Kavanaugh?
I read the backup documents on this $107 million plus bond issue, and, the largest one that I've seen since I've been here. The resolution says not to exceed $114 million bond issue. So in light of the scale of this proposal, I guess my question is, why wouldn't we do it for discussion today? Is there some reason that we're laying this over?
Teresa, York County Attorney's Office. I had communications with bond counsel this morning, and they simply asked me to do that. And so it would be our intent to bring it back before the board when we can. And I'm sorry, I apologize, I don't have a date for that.
Okay, the bond counsel at Baird Home requested that you ask us to lay it over, is that correct?
Yes, I communicated with them this morning.
Okay. Did they have a reason why they wanted it laid over?
I don't really have that at this time, but I believe that we'll have it back before the board after we communicate with bond counsel again.
Okay, they just asked to have it laid over without any reason, is that right?
Commissioner, as I said already, I've had limited communications with bond counsel this morning. I have have had other things this morning, so I've had limited communications with them. They asked me to lay it over. I'm conveying that to the board.
Right, and all I'm asking is, did they have a reason other than the simple request to lay it over? Was there a reason for the layover? That's all. Yes or no?
I think she answered that question 2 times. She had limited conversation with them.
I understand.
That seems to be-
The question, and, you know, I appreciate the county attorney's position on this. I'm not trying to be obstreperous or anything. I just want a clear answer of, did the bond counsel give us a reason for the request to lay it over? Yes, they did, or no, they did not.
Teresa York, County Attorney's Office, and I believe this is a fair response, if I may, Commissioner, and that is, I don't have complete information at this time, and I'd be happy to provide more information to the board after I've been able to get a clearer picture from bond counsel. And I just think.
I appreciate that.
and I
That
think
seems
that's
to
a- and I
indicate
think
that,
that's
no,
a-
they did not.
I think that's a fair response, what I've
Okay,
provided.
all right. You know, like so much else around this project, it's masked in mystery for reasons that escape me. This is a public bond of a massive scale, and we're doing it with very limited discussion, and now we're laying it over at the behest of a private bond counsel for reasons that they won't even explain to us. Interesting. Coming on the heels of yesterday's filing of a taxpayer's lawsuit challenging this entire bond issue, I think that that's also an interesting development that might contribute to some of this. I don't know, but it would seem to me that those two actions might be in some way connected, and it would be, I think, good for us to know from bond counsel if in fact they have a reason to ask us to delay this.
Okay. Commissioner Boyle?
Well, I don't mean to be the contrarian, but I agree with Commissioner Kavanaugh. I think when you lay over an item, and particularly, I mean, I can't phantom the conversation, you know, a phone call, say, Ms. Urick, would you lay over the bond information? Yes. I mean, I think there must be a reason, and I don't know if it's something we can't disclose because of the lawsuit that was filed, or whatever it is, and I think if that's the reason, then maybe we should say so. I mean, not maybe, we should definitely say so. I think, I don't like, you know, there's enough controversy about this without having this pop up and having it laid over for no reason. I'll vote for the layover, and trusting legal counsel that it's needed. But I do think it would be helpful to say so in public, and I don't think there's any legal reason why we can't. So I would ask our legal counsel to tell us if there was a reason to please state it, and if there wasn't, I guess it's kind of odd.
Sure, Larry, come down. No, go ahead, the microphone, please.
Thank you for recognizing me. Larry Storr, 515 Lafayette Avenue, Omaha, Nebraska, 68132. Since it really is no longer on the agenda, I'd like to comment on it.
It is on the agenda, so you can comment.
Okay. Well, you see, this is where the confusion is. If you read the paragraph on citizens' comments, it says we cannot comment on anything that is on the agenda. It also says that we cannot discourse with you. So here we are doing what the rules say we're not supposed to do. But I think the citizens are getting a little bit tired of the football or the can or whatever getting kicked down the road. We do want to vote on this, and we want to hear about it. And now we hear a lawyer say that we don't have a reason for delaying it again. I don't think the founding fathers or anybody else intended that kind of government. I don't know, is this part of the game? Mary Ann might not like this, but is this part of the game you learn from the commissioners, councils of other county boards and other states getting together to talk about how to limit the citizens' involvement? I think we're way off base. You need to slow down, put it in plain language, and then don't deny that citizens' opportunity to speak, as that thing over there says. Thank you.
If I may,
Commissioner Kraft?
Larry, one more time. When an item is on the agenda, you can speak. You interpret it differently than anybody else I've ever talked to.
Can
The
I
oth-
read this? Can I
No,
read it
you've
to
read
you?
it many a time. I don't need to hear it again.
It doesn't say that.
If the item is on the agenda, there's a chance for people in favor to speak, people against to speak, and we can respond. You read it so differently than anybody else. Thank you.
It's in black and white. Maybe a diagram.
Okay. Any other comments concerning this layover? If not, we do have a motion. Or did you say you'd add another comment, Commissioner Kavanaugh? Oh, okay. We do have a motion and a second by Commissioner Boyle. Yes.
Mr. Chair, I've asked some questions, and I think perhaps I'd like to ask the legal counsel if she can make any further statement.
Teresa, your county attorney's office. This board, instead of laying it over, if you wish, you could pull the item as well. Commissioner Boyle and Commissioner Kavanaugh specifically mentioned a lawsuit that, and I don't have all the details of that possibility, and certainly no one's been served, and that is how a lawsuit progresses. But that could be a possibility of why bond counsels made that communication, but I am unaware that anyone has been served at this time with a lawsuit, Commissioner. But I will attempt to gather additional information and always update the board with that information. But my prior answer stands. I am attempting to gather information for this board. The communication is that we lay this over or pull it, and I don't have a date certain for that. But we'll continue to monitor and provide information to the board as we can.
If I may, it appears to me that the possible reason, and it's all apparent and all those sorts of weasel words, because of the lawsuit being filed, I believe it was filed yesterday. We haven't been served, of course, and I think that has raised some questions. So in any event, I think it's just a cautionary thing that it be laid over. So that's the reason. And I don't want to be voting in the dark, but I believe that's the reason. So I will be voting to lay this over. I think it's a practical thing to do. It's cautious, and it should be done. So that's why I would support it.
With that said, we have a motion and a second, so please vote.
I vote yes.
One moment, please.
Motion passes 6-0.
Okay, you got it. Perfect. Okay, we have a need for an executive session concerning labor negotiations, litigation, and personnel. If I could get a motion to...
So moved.
Do we have a second? Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Boyle, second by Commissioner Duda, Commissioner Kavanaugh.
Following that and adjournment, there is a Health and Human Services Committee hearing scheduled in room 903, dealing with the state of mental health services at the Community Mental Health Center and the current status at the Douglas County Health Center. That'll be following our adjournment here today. Thank you.
Okay.
A follow-up comment is, these are both items that are supposed to be under the jurisdiction of the Board of Trustees, which just met yesterday. I do not understand, since committees are supposed to be about items to be brought forth to the agenda, and there is absolutely nothing in this committee meeting that will impact anything coming forth to the agenda, because those go through the Board of Trustees. This is duplicative, it is a power grab, and it is inappropriate to be asking the administrator of the health center and the community mental health center to suddenly answer to this committee, while by statute they answer to the Board of Trustees. These items should rightly be on the Board of Trustees meeting, at our monthly meeting, which just met yesterday. I did not intervene ahead of time, but I certainly hope that this doesn't become like a monthly expectation of our staff to suddenly be answering to two different boards when we have a very clear chain of command. Thank you.
Thank you,
Well,
Commissioner.
as
Dude,
to that-
just hold it, hold
As
it.
to that, I mean,
My-
this
my
goes
turn.
to
Hey,
my announcement
Commissioner
of the
Kavanaugh,
committee thing.
stop.
My turn.
Listen, that
Stop.
these are two different boards, and the one is subservient to the other. This is clearly under the purview of
Stop.
Health and Human Services. And if you do not like public discussion, so be it. You've made that very, very clear. on
Commissioner
this
Kavanaugh.
and many other fronts. Your committee holds no meetings for exactly that purpose, because you abhor public hearings on matters
Commissioner
of public
Kavanaugh.
concern. They're gonna go on, whether you like it or not.
And when I was in business, because it was my
Yeah,
turn to
you-
talk.
Yeah, it was,
Okay.
you did raise your hand. Go ahead, Commissioner
Yeah.
Kraft.
When I was in business, I valued my employees' times. Since this was all presented yesterday by our employees, and they're very important employees taking care of the community mental health center and taking care of the long-term assisted living, they also have many other duties. But to require them to sit for an undetermined amount of time to repeat something that they repeated in a public meeting yesterday is definitely not a proper use of our employees' time. It is expensive. Their time is valuable. And I appreciate their time. I appreciate their efforts, and I think they do an excellent job. And so for a private showing, we probably wasted in time $300-400, plus our own staff. By the time we got all staff and everybody involved, it's probably close to $1,000 worth of county money that is being wasted to repeat this. Thank you.
Okay, and I do see Sherry here. Commissioner, all commissioners, I respect tremendously the job that Chris Rogers tries to do. For one commissioner, and I've never seen any other commissioner do it, continue to talk out of turn and continue to debate an issue without taking their time with their turn, as Commissioner Kraft raised his hand. You could have waited, but you feel like you have a certain privilege to talk whenever you feel like it over someone else, and it's just inappropriate. We have those rules for all of us. Go ahead, Commissioner Kavanaugh.
Yeah, there are no rules, and that's been demonstrated over and over again. I was talking on my committee thing when you allowed someone to comment on it. Responding to that appropriately is considered out of order by you, because there are no rules, as is indicated over and over by citizens who come before us and try to discuss. My question is, what do we have to hide? What's the problem with public hearing and public discussion of public matters? What are we hiding on public health? What are we hiding on juvenile justice? What are we hiding on all of these items that we don't want to have public hearing on? I'm going to have public hearings on them. If you don't want to do your job that you're paid to do by coming and informing the public of what's going on with the public's money and resources, so be it. That's your problem. But I have nothing to hide when we're talking about public property, we're talking about public money, we're talking about public health. We're going to have those discussions in public. And I know that you don't like that, but live with it.
Jeez. Commissioner Boyle.
If I could just make a comment, I am one who, I've tried for years to get the Board of Trustees here so that the public can hear this through Cox Cable, but we do, the meeting is minutes are made and they are recorded, and it is a public meeting. And so it was discussed, and I hesitate to be taking sides, but I do agree with Commissioner Duda that it's pretty redundant, because we had this yesterday, and it was a public meeting, and I understand, that it's not really, and maybe not as, but the one upstairs is not going to be any more public than the one that was yesterday. So when we hold them there, I mean, this, many things are really good, except that I feel like a lot of things that are said should be said here on television. So anyway, so I understand what the complaint is and, of Commissioner Duda, and I understand his position, and I support it.
Thank you, Commissioner Boyle. We haven't voted yet. I don't believe I'm going into executive session, or did we have that vote?
Yep, we have a motion and a second, just haven't voted yet.
Right, so please vote to go into executive session. Litigation, labor negotiations, and personnel.
Larry, do you have the boxing gloves? Did you bring the boxing gloves for us? Did you bring our boxing gloves?
We're looking for boxing gloves, Larry.
Motion passes 6-0.
Yeah, for sure. How's it going? Hanging out. Better not.
Second. Oh, PJ isn't here to call for the vote.
PJ, say vote, please. I'll just vote. I'll call it.
Fabulous. Yep, motion passes, everyone present voting yes. Commissioner Kavanaugh, are you guys starting?